Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 4. Here we go. Just give me 1 second again. Just want to get myself all set up here. Okay. Oops. All right. Hope everybody's doing well. We have a really fun topic to talk about today. And I saw on the news too that it looks like we may be able, if you're fully vaccinated, to not wear masks anymore. And like a lot of that just feels really good. I know masks are so necessary and they have been so necessary to keep everybody safe and healthy, but they felt so restricting. And I think that that's like the first step in us kind of moving past all of this. Um, and I think there's no better time than to be talking about our topic that we're talking about today as we're moving out of quite possibly the most stressful year of many of our lives. And so today, the topic is all about completing the stress cycle and what we can do when we're in a stress cycle to let our bodies know that we're safe and that they don't need to be as stressed out anymore. So I'll talk a little bit about that um, later as we get going in the conversation. But um, I just wanted to kind of remember for a second what we were all what we were all doing about a year ago. We were just coming out of the quarantine phase, right? And it was starting to get sunny out. It was starting to become, nicer, and it was feeling like things were hopeful, right? But there was still this uncertainty with the coronavirus, like what was going to happen, like how was it going to affect us? um, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that this has been 2 months of my whole life, and like you just feel now looking back how you think about how naive we were because here we are over a year into this and it's been this way for this whole time. So I remember around this time I was cleaning all of my groceries. Write in the comments if you guys were with me on that. It was like this whole process. Every time I went to the grocery store, I spent 45 minutes cleaning everything well after they told us that we didn't need to do it because my biggest fear having at the time a newborn, I was just so afraid that I was going to bring the virus into our house and get my baby sick. And so 1 year ago this week, my husband and I and our baby moved from Denver, where I had lived for 8 years. My husband had lived there for like 11 years. Um, and we moved from Denver back to the Northeast, but we had to stay because of a number of different reasons. We had to stay in Ohio with my mother-in-law for about six weeks or so. And so, man, like just thinking about the stress of that time. I mean, we put our house on the market one day um, after they shut, one day before they shut down all of us, the city in Denver. So we had to show our home during the pandemic, and we had to, and I'm sure like everybody, there, if anybody moved during this, like how hard it was. Every time somebody came to our house, I was scrubbing everything down, like absolutely everywhere they could touch, just to make sure. And we drove through the night to get to my mother-in-law's. We packed our everything up ourselves because we were too frightened to have people pack our all of our furniture up. So I don't know. I don't know how we got through that, but I just kept going, right? And I think we all have. I think that we've all had our own challenges and our stressors this year. And it's all looked different. Some of you, might be dealing with stress of like, a job situation, working from home and having to manage daycares closing, schools closing. Some of you have had to maybe deal with loss and relationship straining. So the bottom line is none of us were prepared for this. None of us. And yet we still keep going though. And I think that as women, we're incredibly resilient to stress. Let me know if you agree with that in the comments. I think that humans are very resilient to stress. women especially, and I would say moms the most. I might be biased, but unless, and this is a big unless we get stuck in a stress cycle and that stress cycle doesn't end and it kind of spirals and we spiral down with it. So that's what we're going to talk about today, this concept of the stress cycle and getting stuck in it, and how we can learn to complete the stress cycle to help our health right now in this stressful time and in any stressful time. So, the stress cycle is a biological process. It's kind of how our bodies move through stress. So, if you're interested in this concept of when we're finished talking about this today, two amazing books to read. The first one is called Burnout by Emily Nagoski and her sister. I think her sister is Amelia, and they co wrote the book. And the second one is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Two great books, amazing authors that kind of talk more about this subject if you're interested. But they both talk about how trauma and stress, and yes, the pandemic and uprooting all of our lives this past year is definitely a traumatic event. But they talk about how trauma and stress lives in the body long after the stressor is over and done with. And they talk about how movement is an amazing way to release those stored stress in trauma, that stored stress and trauma in our bodies. So here's another story for you. So a few years ago, I was in a very, very high stress job. So I worked for a startup, and I was the fourth employee to start the company. It was for an industry that I was really passionate about, and on the outside, it looked like just such a dream job. Like I was so pumped to be able to get this job and to work in this company. But on the inside, after about 2 years of working there, I was just a mess. I was completely burnt out. I was working early mornings until late at night, over and over and over again. I was skipping meals. I was living on caffeine. And my anxiety was so bad that it was actually many times waking me up in the middle of the night. I was just waking up with like panic and anxiety. So it was kind of terrible. And I left that job because I was really in tune after a couple years. I was really in tune with the fact that it wasn't it wasn't good for me. If that makes sense. And let me know if that's ever been the case for you. But um, it just felt like there was something wrong. Like I shouldn't have been in that job because I was so, so, so stressed out. So I left it, and I went and I found a job that was made my schedule a lot easier. It was still a very challenging job. It was still a great job. But I didn't have that constant stress on me. And I was a couple months into it, and I remember thinking, like, okay, this is great. Like, I don't feel that same stress that I've been feeling all the time. And then, bam, out of nowhere, I got sick. And I got sick with a stomach ulcer. And my doctor told me that the reason I had the stomach ulcer was because of ongoing stress. And so, even months after the stressor of my job was gone, like completely out of my life, it wasn't even something I really even thought about anymore. My body was still in that stress cycle. It never shut it off. And so I'm curious if you've ever experienced this, because many times your body starts to break down in some way weeks or months after you've ended a stressful relationship, left a stressful job, or had some sort of really stressful event happen. If you've experienced this before, let me know in the comments if you're comfortable, because I think that this is very, very common. So, how do we move through major stress then? Um, the stress of this entire year. How can we move through it? And now that we're kind of coming out of it, we've got this news that we don't have to wear masks if we've been vaccinated. How can we make sure that we end this cycle of the stress of this year? Our stress response system, so it perceives and reacts to stress today the same exact way that it did thousands and thousands of years ago. Back then, the stressors, they weren't the same, right? The stressor was that you were being chased by a wild animal and you were going to die. So there would be a stressful event with a beginning, a middle, and an end. At the end, essentially when we survived the stressful event, we didn't die. Our body knew that we were okay and it came down. And so it kind of stress was coming in and out in spikes. And our bodies adapted to manage those spikes. But it's different now, just in general, not just this past year, just life in general is different. There are different kinds of stressors. There's money stressors, there's work, kids, relationships. And these stresses are ongoing and they last for days, weeks, years, even. So it's easy to get stuck in that stress cycle because it doesn't complete. So it's just ongoing. There's no end. You just kind of get stuck there. So as stress happens, our body releases hormones meant to help us in the short term. Just like when we were chased by, tigers, our bodies will release cortisol and adrenaline to help us move fast. But over time, when we're constantly being stressed out, it causes our bodies to start to break down. So if you're experiencing really poor sleep, maybe like for me, like it's like, snapping at people sometimes, snapping at people that you love, kind of like ragey feelings. Like these are all reasons, or symptoms of being stuck in that cycle, just kind of always feeling like you're on high alert. But so here's what we can do as we're talking about what this is. Here's what we can do now. So we need to show our stress systems that there's an end to the cycle. And we need to show our system that it's safe. And we do this through movement. And so in prehistoric times, it was the act of running away from the danger, the act of running that signaled to our bodies that the problem was gone, right? So, like, we're running away from something that's chasing us, it's going to kill us. And the fact that we stopped running means we didn't die. So, our body was signaled that it was okay. And like, that spike kind of came down. Do you have a dog? Like, anybody that has a dog will watch, you can see this happening. Like, after a stressful event, like maybe they meet another dog or something happens, like that kind of like, upsets them or whatever, they'll shake and they just shake it off to kind of like reset. So it's the same kind of thing. So making movement an everyday ritual, when you think of it as in that way, instead of like, just a way to burn calories or get, a six-pack abs, if you think of movement as a ritual and a way to end that stress cycle, it's more about honoring our bodies and honoring ourselves and caring for ourselves during the stressful time. And I think that can help people who maybe don't love like working out. If you start to like shift the way you think about moving, that can be really beneficial. It doesn't have to be like a 45-minute like hit workout every single time. Like if that's what you like to do, that's great. But walking is great. Running, jogging is fantastic for you. Yoga, Pilates. Shoot out some ideas in the comments if there's any kind of type of movement that you love and that you find kind of like relaxes you and gets you, like de-stresses you. Let us know in the comments because it's always good to find ways to inspire other people. So I urge you to kind of try, to try this, like try to add movement to your day if you're not already doing it. And if you notice that there was a particularly stressful event that happened, I mean, there's just been stress constantly, right? But like if there was like a acute thing that happened, during your day, kind of think about how you can move your body to shake that off. Many times when I finish a workout, anything that was bugging me before I started the workout just usually isn't really there. Oh, awesome. A walk in the woods, Michelle. I like that. Um, Anything that I do that, I was thinking about beforehand, like it just feels lighter, especially after like a good like yoga class or a walk in nature. So I love it. So tomorrow is our last day of the challenge. And, I'm feeling kind of sad about it because I've been really enjoyed these evenings with you guys. And it's been super, I'm so hopeful that I've been able to provide some help for everybody during these stressful times. But it's also been really helpful for me too as I'm starting out my business, just to show up here and interact with you guys and just talk. So tomorrow is the last day, and we're gonna really be talking about the stress cycle again, because we're going to talk about how being stuck in the stress cycle that we talked about tonight can really affect your sleep and how you're resting. So if you're struggling with sleep this year, if that's been a pain point of yours, um, maybe waking up at the dreaded 3 a.m. like that's that time seems to be like the time that people wake up, and a lot of that actually has to do with being stuck in that stress cycle, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. um, so if that's you, if that sounds like you, tune in. Tomorrow our live is actually going to be at lunch. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Hopefully you guys can still join us, but it's Friday, and we have um, we have friends coming over finally. And it's Friday night, so I just figured nobody's going to be on here at 8 p.m. So I figured I'd do it at lunch. So if you can join on, that's great. Otherwise, you can definitely listen in on the recording in the group later on that day. So thank you guys for being here. I love this chat talking about stress because stress really is the culprit behind a lot of the symptoms that we experience. So, if we can get a hold of our stress, I think most of us will find that we start to feel lighter and better. And so, knowing that movement is such a great way to get rid of that like stagnant stress in our bodies. I think that that should be helpful for people. And yes, the I just see noon on here. Yes, the I was thinking probably about 12:30 tomorrow would be the best time. So I'll be live around 12:30, and if that changes, I'll just write a little note in the group. But I hope to see you guys all there at that time. All right, and everybody have a great night and get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow.